KTSA Hot Talk Radio, Guess Who's Coming to Kansas City, that to arouse the needed attention and involvement of a disaster that happened a few months ago, days ago. And what we'll do, first of all, we'll bring on our co-host of this week to kind of tell us what is taking place because of the demand, the reach out that Ferguson did, our folks did, to get other mayors and other people involved and listen to a tape which he emailed. But prior to that, in remembrance and dialogue, Miss Denise Nisi Williams has passed away. The funeral arrangements haven't been set yet, but Pastor Timothy D. Hayes Jr. will handle funeral services at Paradise as soon as it's confirmed. Now, let's get to our show. Mr. On the line? How are you on the line? No?
He seems not to be on the line right now, Mr. MC. I'll put on some music while you give him a call again. Might as well just give him a call. He seems to be lost.
Attorney, the one with the Rod Chapel Law Firm. Is he with us?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you, and great to be back with you.
Why don't you kind of set the tone on what took place, and why are we doing, well, matter of fact, you had a show earlier pertaining to this same thing that happened, and no justice has been done. So kind of bring our audience up to date.
Well, absolutely. And MC, we've got Eva Bruns and John King on with us. They are the parents of Justin King. And it's so sad that in Bourbon, Missouri, their son, Justin King, was murdered. He was shot 3 times by a neighbor in the middle of the day, right before noon, on November the 3rd of last year. Now, that is a sad fact. But what is atrocious and what has people across the country concerned is the fact that there has been no prosecution for the murder. No one's been charged. No one is waiting to stand trial, and the investigation is supposedly complete. And so that is the circumstance that brings us here. I'd be happy to have the mother or father or both of them tell us more. But I think that certainly lets everybody understand where we're at.
Okay, can we have the parents kind of bring us up to date? And this was it's something that shouldn't have happened, but it seemed to be something that's occurring all over these United States. Other countries don't have it like we have it in the United States. And especially, we're talking about the Show Me State, Missouri. So do we have the parents on the line with us yet?
Yes, sir. This is the mother, Eva Gunn. And I believe, John, are you there?
I am, Eva. Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, I hope I can say we have an update or even a good news that seems like it's not going anywhere, and according to them, the case is closed from murdering a person or my son. And just recently we got some evidence that is for my son's storage. It's not even the killer's storage. So it's not complete evidence to justify homicide. And
Well, let me ask you.
now,
Okay, your son. We might have mentioned this in other shows, but how old was he?
he's 28.
28.
Born July 10th, 93.
Hmm. Mr. King, the father.
Yes, sir.
Are you with us, Mr. King?
I am. How you doing?
Okay. This is something that has really fired us up at Ferguson USA Hot Talk Radio. Guess who's coming to Kansas City? I understand everybody is trying to prepare everyone to not just talk, but get involved in something that's going to take place on February the 5th. Kind of bring us up to date how this came about and who has shown interest that they are willing to participate.
Absolutely. I appreciate you allowing us to express our regret in what happened on November the 3rd. My son, Justin Alexander King, as our attorney Rod Chappell mentioned, was murdered on November the 3rd. As a result of the coroner's inquest that the prosecutors saw fit to have conducted was done so unjustly, where he had a one-sided presentation of the evidence, only showing video from my son's camera and not video footage from the murderer's camera, and then selecting the sheriff selecting 6 county members, Crawford County, that were all his friends. They can be found on his Facebook page. And I asked him when I got to the coroner's inquest, I said, Sheriff Lehman, how were these 6 coroner's inquest jury members selected? He said he selected them. You know, and I knew that just a day or two after Justin was murdered, they were already ready to conclude that this was self-defense. Without hearing evidence from many of the neighbors in the area, there in the area that Justin lived, you know, there was neighbors that actually saw, heard, and interacted with the murderer and my son. And so, for him to select 6 people that were his friends, one African American gentleman who happened to be a military guy that was a very close friend of the sheriff. The other gentleman that was the head of the chairman of this jury made a comment halfway during the inquest that he needed to go home and feed his dog, as if my son's life didn't matter. So what we're doing on February the 5th, as a result of the injustice and just nowhere near justice that they did with this coroner's inquest, we are going to have a vigil February the 5th at 11:45 at Justin's home, and right across the street from the neighbor that shot him. We're going to do a vigil there at 11:45 on February the 5th. The address and all of that will be available on Mr. Chappell's website, the NAACP website. We're going to meet there, and we're going to do a vigil, and then from there we're going to do a motorcade down 44 west towards Stillville, Missouri, where we will, 2.5 miles before we get to the courthouse, step outside of our vehicles, and we will march 2.5 miles to the courthouse. And it may even be on Highway 44, I'm not sure, but 2.5 miles we'll march to the courthouse, and we will, shout Justin's name, and we'll get to the courthouse, and we will, once we get there, do a demonstration to let people in Crawford County know that we will not sit by idle and go quietly in the night with the fact that our son has been murdered by a gentleman that 2 years prior had actually pulled a gun on his neighbor while intoxicated. Charges were dropped because the gentleman didn't show up. A few years prior to that, the murderer pulled a gun on his wife and threatened to kill his wife and his children. And this is the prosecutor, actually was a guardian ad litem in his divorce case, that has basically protected this gentleman over the last, I would think, decade. I find it incomprehensible that in 2022, that this type of
justice can be doled out in Missouri. I'm from Missouri. I've been in Missouri all of my life, and I have never ever seen anything like this before in a court of law. It's I don't know. I can't even give you words to describe what happened on that coroner's inquest.
Well, maybe Attorney Rod Chappell can kind of enlighten us with what's. But he was the one that brought it to my attention about this terrible thing that happened. Attorney Nimrod Chappell, bring us up to date. What made? Were you the acting attorney in this, or you? What's your role?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I am. You know, this is a terrible situation where there's been a murder, and anytime there's been a death under suspicious circumstances, the coroner has the obligation, the duty, to review the death. What was the cause of death and make a determination. And in this case, without charges being filed by the prosecutor, there's an open question as we waited for the coroner's report. And I'll just note that, you know, I know that Justin's parents who are on there now, Eva and John, had major reservations about what was happening in Crawford County from day one, based on how the investigation and how the information from that investigation was not shared. There's been a concerted effort, it appears, that in Crawford County, that the ministerial duties of the coroner, of the prosecutor, even of the sheriff, have been waylaid, have been taken astray unnecessarily. First of all, in any investigation, the prosecutor and the sheriff, law enforcement, have the ability to share information. It is customary to do that with the families of the victims, right? In this case, Justin's parents have been treated like complete outsiders. And that's what we feared for Justin when he was there in Bourbon, Missouri. And that's why when the chief of police in Bourbon, Missouri said, I'm not going to investigate, and handed it over to the sheriff of Crawford County, and then within less than a week, there was a statement out. A statement saying that this was in self-defense, that that's what caused the murder. Supposedly for some sort of a robbery or a burglary. Now, the circumstances don't make any sense because, you know, we've already said it was November the 3rd of this 2021, and that it was the neighbor, Eric Barber, who admits and did shoot Justin King. Not once, not twice, but 3 times, okay? He did that outside of his home. And to suggest that Mr. King did anything to bring this on himself in terms of, you know, robbing Eric Barber, who is much larger in size and stature than Justin King, who was in his home and had to come out in order to receive Mr. King, is just a travesty. It is. And
let me ask you this, Attorney Nimrod, for the benefit of myself geographically, where is Bourbon, Missouri? The location?
Bourbon, Missouri, it is about an hour and 15 minutes outside of St. Louis, down I-44. It is probably about an hour and 45 minutes away from Jefferson City, sometimes 2 hours, depending on what bus you get behind. It is close to Cuba, Missouri. Stillville is the county seat of Crawford County. It is out there. It's rural Missouri.
And what is the population makeup of that particular town?
You know, the exact number I'm going to have to...
well, I mean, as far as nationality, races, and things like that.
Oh, sure. It is, and John and Eva, you tell me if you think any different. It is not a diverse area. Our understanding is that there have been a number of racial issues there in and around Bourbon, Missouri, and that there are not many Black or African Americans or Asians or anybody, to be honest with you, other than Caucasian Missourians out there.
Yeah, it's very little African American population. Demographically, it's again that is one of the reasons why I spoke with Justin when he told me where he was moving. I said, man, you really don't want to move in that area because I've sold home improvement over the last 15 years in that area. And I remember, some instances over the last decade of, dealing, running into KKK members and that kind of thing. It's an area where I would not move myself personally. And I told him that. I said, Justin, why don't you live in St. Louis and travel to there? I mean, I know your daughter's in Cuba, Missouri. Why don't you go see her, and travel, not live there? But Justin was the kind of kid that, he didn't have an enemy, who knew no strangers, and more importantly, his main concern was his daughter, his 9-year-old daughter at the time, Harley, who he loved dearly, was completely involved in her life. Didn't miss a game, didn't miss a swimming, nothing. He didn't miss a PTO meeting. He was the ideal father. Not only was he the ideal father, he was the ideal son. He was the ideal neighbor. He was the ideal friend. As a result of that, all of his neighbors, and these are white neighbors that I can tell you, have come out to support and let everyone know that this was not a justifiable homicide. All of his neighbors, all of the people that were there when he got killed are saying Justin was killed in cold blood. That Eric Barber, who had already mentioned online that he wanted to dump a mag in someone, and I'm talking about a magazine of bullets, had mentioned that he wanted to kill someone, and that he was itching to do that. This is all evidence that's online. Not only that, 2 years prior, he pulled a gun on a neighbor, a white neighbor, by the way, pulled a gun on him while he was intoxicated, was charged for it, but never went to court because the gentleman didn't follow up, didn't go to court, and the charges were dropped. Well, years prior to that, he pulled a gun on his own wife, going through a divorce process. Mind you, the prosecutor at that time was the guardian ad litem in his case. The guy pulled a gun on his wife, threatened to kill the kid and the wife if she didn't go along with the program. The guardian ad litem, and now the prosecutor in this case, Mr. Smith, saw fit to give custody of the daughter to Mr. Barber. So here we are. We have the prosecutor coddling and protecting this man over the last decade. And, but unfortunately, when he pulled a gun on his wife, he didn't shoot his wife. When he pulled a gun on the other neighbor, a white neighbor, he didn't shoot his neighbor. But now he pulled a gun on my African-American son, and he pulled the trigger 3 times. So that, to me, is racially motivated. It already threatened Justin's life, and many of the neighbors had said it in the coroner's inquest, but they discounted. They acted as if that it was not relevant information. So, guys, you can understand why it's appalling. No justice was done, and it's really upsetting.
Let me ask Mr. Our folks, in your life experience of things like this, and this is nothing that's new, what have you experienced, and what feedback have you had since the show was aired last week?
Well, MC, needless to say, I am just dumbfounded, for lack of a better description, okay, that this is something that's, I talk to people around the country, and this is something that we have seen in other places, not just Michael Brown's killing here, in the Ferguson area, that we've seen something, but it was not as callous, disrespectful, heavy-handed as this. This compares to me to what happened down in Brunswick, Georgia, where Mr. Audrey was killed, where that there was no on the show earlier. Mr. King explained where they just drugged his son's body, about 6 feet from where the killing where he was killed for no reason whatsoever. And then the next day they brought him home, Mr. Barber home from the jail within 24 hours and released him. normally, and to me, when you kill somebody, traditionally, you get out, in jail without any bond until you go to trial. When the police brought him home with escort and clean his house out, not clean his house, he had to move all his equipment and his guns, to someplace else. And this, like, to me, was like, they were serenading something that he had did, and he just seemed like he was the person that had been wrong. He was like a celebrity to the police department.
Let me ask Mr. Scott Owen, as a person being non-African American and being from the great state of New York, and being involved in where you live now, what's your thoughts on this? What type of comments?
I agree with Mr. Nimrod, Mr. Chappell, or Lawyer Chappell, that it's a travesty. There's if there's anything to be said about our way of life, it should be that we live in a fair state, and this doesn't sound like it's fairness has happened. So that's my feeling on it.
Go ahead, ma'am. I'm getting ready to open the door, but you beat me to the punch. Go ahead.
All right. There's another aspect of this, is that the coroner's inquest wasn't done in a way that was appropriate or right. That's where you're supposed to get all the evidence. The coroner was supposed to provide the public an opportunity to review the evidence, and that jury, even with our questions about why it is that anybody would pick 6 friends of theirs to come up and hear a case and expect that they're going to be neutral and independent, as opposed to a jury and a trial, they didn't get to see the evidence. We never saw any pictures of Justin's body. But yet they signed a document, and I think that the mother and father can back us up on that. They signed a document saying that they did.
Yep.
That's filed with the court. Why are we filing documents with the court that are inaccurate and incorrect? I think that says a lot about the kind of investigation, the kind of process that's gone on in this case so far.
Ma'am, go ahead.
No, I would just like to add that Mr. Rod writes that the investigation is not complete and just decide to be a homicide. In no fingerprints, TV filmable, that they claim that my son breaking and trying to rob the place, and my son have a good job. And he only wear pajama and no shirt.
And wasn't he at work? He
was in work.
Mm-hmm. Before he went over there. And he wasn't done for the day. He was just taking a break. We've had the unfortunate... Didn't we... Who spoke with his manager there, who had called booking?
Yeah, he was on a break. He was on a little. I don't think it was even a lunch break. I think it was like a 15-minute break that he was able to take because he worked from home. Justin had the ability to sell ice to an Eskimo. He sold auto warranties for a company called Auto Assure. He was one of their top salespeople.
Yeah.
And his boss basically spoke out on channel, I think it was Channel 2, that said that, how can this happen? A young man that's on his break go and get killed in this situation, and no one has to answer for it. So, he was on a break. He was very good at what he did, and so I believe that it was basically a case of racial hatred and jealousy, and this guy was setting Justin. He had planned this. He had premeditated. One of the neighbors mentioned that Eric Barber had actually relocated or moved his video cameras to a different spot. They all noticed that. The prosecutor paid no attention to what they said.
That's the audio.
And the audio that was on his camera, on his system, security system, was not in place. The prosecutor paid no attention to that. They said that Justin went in the house and ripped televisions off the wall. There was no fingerprints on the televisions. They said they were smudged. Prosecutor didn't pay any attention to that. All of the neighbors that mentioned that came and said that, and these are white neighbors now. You know, your Crawford County citizens that are saying that Justin was killed in cold blood, and that Eric Barber had said before that he was planning on killing Justin. Prosecutor paid no attention to that, and to me, the prosecutor hasn't paid attention to nothing but protect this murderer over the last 10 years.
And there at the inquest, did anyone else get the feeling that it was Justin that was on trial?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. All about Justin. Not even mentioning Eric Barber is supposed to be a killer murderer. They bring in the footage from my son's footage. It's not Eric Barber. There's no any evidence for him whatsoever.
Right. Did they spend any time trying to develop a motive from Barber on why he did this?
No. Let's just be honest. This is a cut and dry, black and white issue. You know, Crawford County is predominantly white. The people that put the prosecutor and the sheriff in office that voted for him are white. They're probably not really concerned about African Americans in that county, and that's what it's all about. I believe it's not about justice. It's about getting elected, staying elected, and doing what your voters want you to do instead of being justice for every citizen of that county. It's not about that. And you could tell that when these 6 friends of the sheriff showed up. They didn't pay attention to any of the witnesses. The only thing they paid attention to was what the prosecutor said. And one other thing that stuck out, Rod, that I do remember. I remember the one that that agreed with Eric Barber's testimony. After he finished, if you do remember, after he finished his testimony, the prosecutor told that gentleman if he cared to stay in the courtroom to hear the testimony, he was very welcome to do that. But every single other person, he did not say that to. So that's one other thing that stuck out in my mind. I'm like, how can you be so blatantly disrespectful and injustice? It was blatant injustice.
Well,
I'm like,
John, you raise a great point. You raise a great point because, you know, not only did he not invite the other witnesses there who should have been allowed to participate, he even called a witness that had been inside the room, right? Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And now here's something else, and I think that this will shock a lot of people. And the reason why is because I feel like the statute's pretty clear. This is a court proceeding, although it's not done by the court, right? It's a coroner's inquest, but you're supposed to have a record of it. There's not a record of this. You know, they didn't record it. They didn't have a court reporter there. And I don't know whether you remember, there were several questions, people asking, is this not being recorded? Don't you have to record it? Where's your court reporter? And they insisted that they did not. That's not right. That is not right. We know in other coroner's inquests, such as one that was done over in Madison County, there was a transcript of that one. You know, I understand that there was another coroner's inquest that was done right there in Crawford County, and we are trying to track this down. If you're listening and have the capacity or the ability to help us find the information, please do, because there was another coroner's inquest that took place in 2014, and we believe that there was a record made of that simply to preserve the testimony, which is the right thing to do. And that's all we're asking, is for the prosecution of a person who is not living up to our community standards, who has violated the number one tenet, that thou shalt not kill.
Well, let me ask this. I know, and this can come from either Mr. Owen or from our folks that have done, I believe, an extensive job in getting the word out about what's going to take place and how you're trying to energize people to participate. How might the people who just so happen, hopefully on purpose, who are listening to this show, how might they text and get their question answered, hopefully?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If they have questions about this case, or if you have information that could be of assistance, please text your questions to 816-309-5009, just 816-309-5009. And I have to tell you that even though this is an issue of color, Justin was a brown-skinned man that was in a predominantly white area. There are lots of Caucasian brothers and sisters out there who have reached out to try and provide additional information and support for justice in the case and to the family. And so if you're a person who has information, or you know of a process where that information can be obtained, if you've been through this before or have a situation of your own, whether or not in Crawford County or not, please text us at 816-309-5009.
Well, let's add to that. That's to your office, Scott, or the people who are listening now. Somebody said, be sure to tune in. I know you emailed last week's show to a lot of people. How might they get involved with today's show?
The best thing, Mr. MC, would actually be to get in contact with Mr. Chappell. I mean, they could go on the Ferguson USA Hot Talk Radio, Facebook or YouTube or Twitch and put a comment in. But the best thing, so that they could get answers, would be from Mr. Chappell.
Sure. And I would be happy to give an email address too. It's very easy. It's Nimrod, Nimrod, at chappellaw.com.
Yes.
So Nimrod at Nimrod,
Yes.
last name Chappell, CHAPPELLAW.com.
Well, come
and that would be additional information to provide. Hello?
And we also welcome every single person that's hearing this radio show. Please, if you can, on February the 5th, take out time and come to Bourbon, Missouri. Mr. Chappell will give you the information about the address where we're going to meet. We're going to do a vigil.
Yes.
My son Justin there February the 5th at 11:45. That's where the time that he was supposedly killed at his home, and right in between the murder and his home. We're going to do a vigil there. The murdered no longer lives there. The neighbors basically made him move out. We're going to do a vigil there, and then we're going to do a motorcade down 44 West to Steelville, Missouri, which is where the courthouse is, and we're going to do a protest there at the courthouse. News stations, radio be there as well, and we implore on everyone listening to come out, because even though this is about Justin King, not just about Justin King. It's about your son and your daughter that are facing these same situations up in Missouri that happen to be of a darker skin. We're being killed. Our children are being slaughtered. With this previous president that we had, you had the January 6th insurrection. You got people storming the Capitol. We have people slaughtered, and they feel like they can just do things. We have to take a stand for our children. We have to let the world know this is not acceptable, and that we will not go quietly in the night. We have to stand up for our children. This is going to continue to get out of hand. So we ask you, please, please that you come out, stand with us for justice, because this is not just an isolated incident happening all over the state of Missouri, all over the country, and we have to stand up and make change. So please come out February the 5th. It's not going to be all day. We're going to protest. We're going to let Crawford County know resoundingly that this is not acceptable and that we will not go quietly in the night.
And John, that is, you said it so right. The one thing to remember is that we will be there with some members of the community, because they don't like what's happening either. They don't want killers rolling around, walking around their areas. The failure to prosecute is a political manifestation of the same issues that we know are in Missouri, that everybody can't get justice on an equal basis, and it's up to us to make sure that that happens.
What I was trying to get the people who are listening to the show, we're trying to really get them ready to how great this show and other shows like it can get the people involved. So if anyone's out there, how can they text? We talked about YouTube, we talked about Facebook. Scott and or R, tell them what to do and who's listening and who can put the question out to our other public that's listening.
Well, I'm like Scott, and I think the number they should use is the number that Nimrod gave, because one of the things we don't want to confuse people about what's going on, and we must stay focused.
But
what's taking place
uh,
here.
in order to comment, though, if they're watching, they can go to the Facebook page, FergusonUSAHotTalkRadio.com or Ferguson USA Hot Talk Radio. They can go to the YouTube page, and all those places have comments that I'm monitoring. So, if anybody...
Have there been any comments so far?
No, not today.
Also, let me give you my Facebook page, because I have been vigilant in informing the public about this. This is Justin's father. My Facebook is J. Alexander King. J. Alexander King. If you want to find out information on Facebook, you can definitely search me out, because that's all I'm talking about, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, as you can imagine, losing a child. I mean, what I'd like you to do is close your eyes and imagine losing a child. Someone that you love, someone that was not a derelict, someone that was not a drug addict, someone that was not a criminal. My son was a loving father, a loving neighbor, a loving son. I mean, he paid half of his mom's rent. I mean, this kid was just all about helping and loving people. And that's why his neighbors are coming out. I mean, despite the racial difference, his neighbors are backing him up and saying, "No, Eric, you were unjustified. This was not justifiable homicide. You cold-blooded murdered and premeditated murdered this guy who, helped us put Christmas lights on our plate, who helped us take our groceries in, who brought us food. These are the neighbors that are standing up for this young African-American son of mine. And so that's the kind of kid he was, right? So when you have a guy like that, murdered in cold blood for no reason, you have to stand up. You have to say, now here's the thing. If my son was wrong, I'd be the first one to say, you know what, I'm sorry, it happened to your son, but you had no right to do what you did. But guys, he did no wrong. All he did was try to help people. Because he's trying to help people, I am vehemently going to protest until my son gets justice.
Let me add to that. We're talking about, we're on radio, and maybe if you got some viewers through YouTube, Facebook, but also we should really encourage and request that newspapers, either a letter to the editor, editorials, or what have you, we need to get this a well-rounding, that we're not just playing by any means necessary. We want to reach the public. We want the people to get involved. It's just like the situation that happened down in Georgia, where they had 12 jurors, and the 3 men were convicted for killing the guy they said burglarized the place, called he was tracking down that particular area. But let me let you know, public, that of those jurors, 9 of them were white women. And those white women was that convicted, these 3 Caucasian or European. We're not talking about color, we're talking about justice. Is that right?
That's right.
Yes.
We need justice.
Sir,
Absolutely right.
Mr.
Okay.
MC, if I might suggest something, you are the head of the United Minority Media Association. Maybe that should go out in a newsletter to your members.
True. And we did ask one of our members, I don't know, I think our email to show to him, that's Eric Wesson, who's with Southern area leading newspaper, black newspaper, Mr. What is his name now? Eric? At the Kansas City Call. And there's other, I'm talking about, it could be white, it could be any minority, that could be Asian, that could be Hispanic, that could be just people in public. You watch all these different news deals, get involved.
We was in the newspaper last week, Dispatch post on the front page. I just gonna.
Yeah, repeat that again, ma'am.
Yeah, we are on the front page on the Dispatch post newspaper. I believe it was last week.
That's in St. Louis, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Which my coworker mentioned it to me because she told me to see my page pictures in the big kind of Dispatch post. So we also in the newspaper.
You know, it's another person. He has a show. He's a part of Yuma, talking with Alex Thomas, and his show airs on Monday morning from 10 to 11, and they can call the station number. That number is 816-763-2040, and they can give him the line that goes directly to the broadcast of the show that's taking place, and any show that's going on. We need to motorize the people to get them involved, that we're sick and tired of taking this.
That's right. That's right. And this is a huge point, because the power of the press to not only shine a light on injustice, but to spread an opportunity for the people in our community to take back their streets, to take back local government, and ensure that their view about what is moral and what is just is being done. It's such a great opportunity, and we definitely appreciate UMC and Ira for everything that you've done to make sure that your listening audience not only has the most up-to-date civil rights news taking place in the state, but has it in a way that they can do something with it, right?
What about the people that are born to members of the Missouri Black Chamber of Commerce? Have you motivated them? Have emails gone out, or has communication? And what are their thoughts if you had a chance to exchange information on what has taken place in Bourbon, Missouri? Not only Bourbon, Missouri, any place.
Well, you see, in conversation with our members, okay, naturally, we as blacks in Missouri said the same thing, that the Attorney General been involved, know what things are taking place, and it's a disappointment because, unfortunately, we as blacks in Missouri, it's a hard time in some places, okay, to get incorporation with the police departments, you know, to work with us. I would say one thing on that note here. In St. Louis, county here, we're very fortunate to have our first black police chief that was just appointed this past week. You know, and I have to say that because Ken Gregory and I went to high school together. I mean, so right now there is some kind of semblance of black participation in the system at a higher level. Because here in St. Louis, we have a black police chief in the city and also in St. Louis County. But I have to say that there's a long way to go to work in the department and stuff to get recognition and get help. But most people feel that this travesty is shooting out taking place and feel their pain and support what they're trying to get done, you know, in their prayers. And that's the best thing we can do right now.
Well, you're talking about Missouri, but the police chief happened to be African American in KCK, that's Kansas City, Kansas. They got they do have 3 people that are going to reinvestigate or reopen 100 cold cases that happened a lot of times people just get murdered. They say, oh, that's just another Baba, whatever name they want to use at that particular time. But we don't, a lot of time our people, our neighbors, you have a drive-by shooting, whatever, sometimes the seniors and people live in the neighborhood, they don't want to get involved because they set them up for retaliation.
Yes. And I can tell you that in many cases where you have individuals who are witnesses, there are laws that protect a witness. Those are supposed to be enforced by the police department, by the court system, and those laws are there for a reason. Because, the old adage is, if you see something, say something. But that's impossible to do if you have to fear for retaliation. It's the same law that protects people who are whistleblowers or who come and testify in cases of discrimination or harassment or retaliation of any sort. These laws have to be respected. And so if you're a witness, if you're a person who has information that needs to come forward, you should know that there are ways that you can be protected and to protect yourself. If you need help with that, reach out to people who are knowledgeable. If you don't know a lawyer, call one. You can certainly call me. I'd be happy to try to get you to somebody who can assist with that. But it's important to not let that information be swept under the rug. Think how many killers would still be on the street without people who were actually there, who saw or know about it, providing the information they know.
Let me pick it back off of that, attorney Rod Chapo. The Jackson County Bar Association, the black lawyers, doesn't necessarily mean just black lawyers. How can people really get involved? Because a lot of times they don't know what to do or when to do it.
Right. Are you asking how the Black Law Association can get involved to assist in cases like these?
Right, and also the NAACP and SCLC. It doesn't matter, any type of agency that fight crime or want to deter crime, and it doesn't make any difference anymore. It could be a young girl, it could be a baby. It's not just men all the time. The people who do this killing, they don't care.
That's right. And you're right, MC. That's why we've got to absolutely do our part. If you would like to anyone else would like to get connected with the NAACP, it is very easy at this point. All you need to do is type in mo.naacp.org, and then it'll take you straight to the Missouri NAACP website. If you just want to type in NAACP right there into your search bar, it will take you to the NAACP, and you can find us that way. You can certainly use my number, which is just an 816-309-5009. Please text to that number. If you want to be a member, if you want to get engaged, if you're wondering what the NAACP is doing in your area, please help us. For other organizations like the SCLC, led by the great Vernon Howard, if you would like to get involved with the Urban League or many of the other civil rights entities around, faith-based organizations, including Missouri Faith Voices, I'll tell you, all you need to do is just text 816-309-5009, and we'll make sure that you get to the organization that you're looking for.
Now, the King family. The King family. I know by listening to the show, we hope that you appreciate what is taking place. You might could think of some other things that might have been an oversight or overlooked, not on purpose, but people just didn't think about it. Do you have some things you might want to add to encourage our people to get involved?
Absolutely.
I can share with those that are listening on the radio is that, I've lived 56 years in the state of Missouri. In a couple of years I was in Florida. I've seen a lot of things happen. I've seen a lot of improvement, but I haven't seen enough improvement in what's going on protecting our children. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to get involved. We have to make the uncomfortable decisions. We cannot be complacent and expect any other culture to stand up for our children. We have to do it. And I implore you to get involved. Make a book. Send this information out on Facebook. social media is a very powerful tool. You know, send this out. You know, read the story. Share it with your friends. Share it with your church members. Share it with your fraternity brothers. Share it with your sorority members. I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. So right now, if there are any members of Kappa Alpha Psi out there that are a member of my fraternity, I'm asking brothers, show up. You know, show up, because this could be your son. This could be your daughter. This is not an isolated incident. This is happening every single day, and it's being swept under the rug.
Well, let me add to that, attorney. Everybody seems to be in the Zoom world. That is something people can do. Everybody say, I got, the way they said, is a Zoom meeting coming on. So they are exchanging information. We should increase that participation to cover the King situation that could be any family suffering from the same thing.
You're absolutely right, MC. You're absolutely right. We will work through the NAACP and other organizations to ensure that we can use Zoom as a device to provide more information about this terrible crime.
Well, go ahead.
Yes, from being, I would just like to thank you for your stations and all the help that we can get to bring justice. Not only for my son, for all the people that have been murdered, not saying any answering. For just being, I'm sorry, because I'm from the Philippines and my son is mixed. And the only thing that I can spread the whole word that I have to be a mother and stand by and be the voice of my son. And for my granddaughter that loses her dad, that we have to be strong and
Miss King, go ahead. We're with you emotionally and what have you. And while you continue, let's not forget about our Mason and our Elton organization like that and other religious organizations.
yes, we are all over, like all the Francis and all the most of Filipino. We aspire all other stations in St. Louis, and hopefully they can make it there. I know it's going to be kind of far away in the weather, but I know there's only one time that we make it different to get justice for people losing their someone love.
Let me see, this is our approach again. How is his daughter taking this, and where is she at right now? Is she with you or with her mother?
It's on her mother. They live in Cuba. We're trying the best thing we can to spend time with her because I know how hard it is for her. And she's just only 10. And she's really not showing much emotion because for her age being young, but I know the time that happened that she was there and witnessed the shotgun and her dad laying in the ground. And I know she's going to carry the rest of her life.
Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll reach that time again, so we can give some closing information that you need volunteers. And let's repeat those numbers or those emails or websites that people can visit.
Absolutely. The easiest phone number, this is Nimrod Chapel. Text 816-309-5009. Get more information about Justin King's murder, what we're doing to get justice for him. For the NAACP or other faith-based or civil rights organizations, will get you to the right place. Thank you for your attention and being a part of this conversation.
And MC, my name is Ira, folks, and at this point, I just have to go to Nimrod. We work very closely as he's also training for the Missouri Chamber of Commerce, so we're in this 100%.
And this is, guess who's coming to Kansas City? Been here 32 years, and anyway we can get the word out, but it's time for us to get ready for tomorrow. And you know what tomorrow is. We want to send the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. And also, Tom is retiring as of month, Tom Brayton, from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He spent 22 years just to have something that he's done a lot of things. If we could achieve half the things he's done, dealing with injustice, dealing with things to motivate our people, let's get on board.
Yes, I can be reached. If you go to my Facebook, there's a plethora of information about Justin and the case, and that Facebook page is J. Alexander King, and you can also call me. I'm happy to take calls. My phone number is 314-326-2283. 314-326-2283. Again, this is my fight. Again, I am not going to sleep until my son gets justice, and I appreciate any and everything that you guys are willing to do. Thank you.
Mrs. Scott Owens? Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
Information on Facebook is not how to spell it because the Philippine word is L-A-W-I-T. I'm sorry, L-A-W-I-T-U-T, Manala. You can pop up in my son's picture. And if you want to reach out for my number is 314-518-8462. And again, thank you so much for all the supporters, the radio station, and Mr. Rod, and all the people behind you.
Mrs. Scott, engineer, take us out of here.
Will do. And everybody have a good weekend.